So, who's the other guy? He's not there. The other guy is not there. So, everyone is ready. We can start. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, Vidi.
So, let's start. So, we are going to learn about the contract management based on FIDIC 1999. We'll learn about starting from the basic and all the terminologies which are used. Okay. So, as you know, project management is to manage the smooth functioning of the project, coordinating various stakeholders of the project and government department, government authorities. The stakeholders, as you know, in project management can be multiple stakeholders, internal as well as external. Internal as in the people working in your organization, and the external like the government department or some other vendors or anyone. Construction management is to manage the smooth functioning of construction activities and coordinating with various contractors. Contract management is to manage the smooth functioning of contract between the parties and the stakeholders. So it's all the tasks you do, starting from defining the objectives, planning, execution, and involving all the players who can manage or affect the contract management. So this is how our workshop is going to be covering. First, we'll understand the contract management. What is contract? Why contract is essential? Various types of agreements. What is the contract management? Why FIDIC? Then we will go into the actual process, pre-tendering process and procedures. What should be the project approach, budget, cost plans, consultant appointments, approach to tender and tender process, recommendation, award, unsuccessful notifications. Then we will proceed, we will go further to post-tendering procedures like claim and dispute manola, legal documentation, setting up process and procedures, contract formation, certification, change control, variation procedures, taking over, defect liability, contract closeout, discharge, maintenance or performance certificate, and then the payment, claim rejected, unaccepted, adjudication board, amicable settlement, arbitration, and litigation. So all the topics we are going to cover in this workshop. So let's start with understanding the contract management. A contract may be defined as an agreement, generally written or maybe oral, between two or more parties, enforceable by law, whereby the parties to the contract promise to do or refrain from doing some specified acts which must be legal purpose. So normally one party is framed as seller who provides service or supply the goods, and the other party is the buyer in exchange of an consideration. See, normally the difference between an agreement and a contract is agreement is something which is agreed upon, but a contract is something which is legally enforceable. An agreement, you cannot enforce it in a legal way. So that is the difference between a contract and an agreement. Contracts are administered with the contract law, which is based on common law, civil law, which are different from constitutional law, statutory law, and regulatory law. We'll talk about these laws. See, now, as I told you, the contract laws are completely different from these laws, the constitutional law, statutory law, and regulatory law. These laws are framed by the government. As you can see, the constitutional law, this can be right to education, right to speech, right to freedom. These are the constitutional law. Then the statutory law is something, which is written and enforced by the law agency like police or military. It can be like the red light signal law, or it can be law related to marriages above 18 years. So these are statutory law. Then we have the regulatory law. Regulatory law is like a regulation, if it may be regulation related to imports, where the government may put a regulation on allowing to import certain goods, but not allowing to buy import certain goods, or it can be related to some construction thing like safety rules of the government. So this regulatory law has to be comply with. So essentials of valid contract. So in order to have a contract, it's a common logic that there should be two or more parties. They should have some objective to enter into a contract. Then there should be details of the agreement, like how the details about the transaction and the consideration. When we say consideration, it is like the money for the seller, it will be in the form of a money, and for the buyer, it will be in the form of some work or service. And it should have the offer, acceptance, and mutual assent. It should be between competent parties and in correct form. So when we say competent parties means like they should have the authority to enter into a contract, and they should be mentally sound, and they should be competent enough to enter into a contract. And it should not violate a public or statutes. As I told you earlier, there are laws from the government related to constitutional or regulatory. So it should not violate any of such laws. Violation of any of the essential features would make the contract defective, thus stated to be null and void. So if any of such violation happens, the contract will be null and void, and it will not be enforced by the law of that government, law of that country. There are some mistakes which does not make the contract defective, like in human errors. It can be in the quantity, unit rate, or value included in the contract. Mistakes due to terms or conditions included in the contract. Usually a contract is said to be executed when all the parties to the contract have fully performed their contractual duties and obligations agreed under the contract. So a contract is normally said to be fully executed or closed when there is a list of obligation from either parties. And when that obligation is fulfilled, like the obligation from the seller side will be to provide the service to do the work. And from the buyer perspective, it will be to make the payment, return back the guarantee, cancel the insurance or something like that. When all the obligations are over and the services have been fulfilled, then the contract is said to be closed. Death of the offeree is rendered offer is invalid. Also, the death of the offerer terminated the offer. Like in case of any situation like that, the death of the offeree or the death of the offerer, there can be termination of the contract. There are some contract terminologies. Conflict of interest. Conflict of interest occurs when any party or an individual is involved in multiple obligations or interests while fulfilling one of which could possibly corrupt the compliance or motivation of an act in the other. So it's like, suppose like there is two parties who are entering into a contract, and one party is already having some interest in the other party. Maybe, there may be a share of the person who is doing the contracting in the other party. And if he's awarding that contract to the other party, then it becomes a conflict of interest, because that the person or the committee who is awarding the contract is already having some shares in the other party who is getting the project. So it's like, favoring that other party. So then it becomes a conflict of interest. Then it's about the ethics. It's moral philosophy, which answers questions related to morality, like good and evil, right and wrong, virtue and vice, justice and crime. It relates to moral actions, conduct motive, which is professionally right or benefiting and conforming to professional standards of conduct. So ethical practices like slavery, in the contract, you should not include labor hours for 20 hours or something like that, which will cause ethical questions as to how you can employ a labor as a slave. Then it becomes like a slavery. So that kind of ethical questions can come. Then is a fraud. Fraud is a crime, and also civil law violation, which is an international deception made for personal gain or to damage, deprive another individual. Hoax is also a deception without any intention. So fraud is something like any person wants to gain advantage in some way, like he may give duplicate bill, or he may try to forge some certificate to show that the project is completed, like that. So this kind of frauds can occur, and this will terminate the contract. So these are some contracts categories. There is construction contract, service provider contract, partnership contract, franchise contract, JV contract, employment contract, sales and service contract, supply manufacturing contract, lease or rental contract, non-disclosure or confidentiality contract. So these are some common types of contract, depending on the type of work to be undertaken and depending on kind of the parties involved. Key aspects. Successful contract management covers the period from the beginning of a procurement until after a contract ends. The receipts of the goods and services at the right price, quality, on time, as well as proper compensation of the contractor is the goal of a successful procurement. So, successful contract management has to ensure that the goods is purchased at the right price, right quality, and on time. These things will always be mentioned in the contract, and the work which is done or the goods being supplied has to fully comply with whatever is mentioned in the contract document. And at the same time, the contractor should get his compensation as per whatever the payment schedule is mentioned. That is the main goal of a successful procurement. However, poor contract management often results in the end user frustration, reluctance to use new vendors, agency acceptance of poor quality service or goods, increased cost due to lack of quality or overpayment to the contractors, lack of contractors accountability, and generally poor contractor performance. So in case of poor contract management, there is a lot of issues as mentioned here, where there is a reluctance to use new vendors. So there is very less chance of innovations. Then poor quality material use, which can, increase the overall cost of the project or can cause issues in the future. Increased cost due to lack of quality or overpayment to contractors. There can be overpayments and the financial issues, unnecessary wastage of time can happen. A good contract is a means to an end. Simply enforcing the contract, however, does not necessarily result in a successful relationship with the contractor. Success should instead be measured by effectiveness of the program that the contract supports. So basically, the contract should meet the purpose of the end user who's going to use the goods or the service. It should, fully meet the needs of the end user. Then the contract is considered to be successful. Yeah. It doesn't, a good contract is, it means like, it's not like something you just finish it, okay? It should be, it should meet the needs of the end user's expectation. And it should not be just like the terms and condition and the contractor fulfilling that terms and condition. There should be continuous communication with the contractor and the end user. So it is on the track of, what the end user really needs and whether that contract is fulfilling that thing. If that is not happening, some improvements can be made, some variations can be made. So let's see the contract management. The management in simple word is art of getting things done. There are various types of management. The management process includes initiation, planning, scheduling, monitoring, controlling, and closing. So it's like initiation, it's defining the objective, why you need it, what is the purpose, what you are going to achieve. Then planning it, to plan what resources you will need, how much budget you are going to need. Then scheduling, like how much time frame you have to complete it, how you are going to schedule it. Then we have to monitor it when the project actually starts. You have to see the performance, whether it's complying to your schedule, whether it's within the deadline. And controlling it, that means if anything is like if there is a variation in what has been scheduled, then to control that, maybe it's in terms of budget or in terms of time, and accordingly closing it successfully. Contract management includes all the process related to identification of the objectives, needs, or wants of one party, and managing a contract to deliver the objective, setting deadlines, and adhering to the agreed contract terms and conditions, thus resulting in the contract execution while ensuring customer